Was it the band Inside Out led by Zach De La Rocha before he was in Rage Against the Machine?
Smokes. No, I had never heard that.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good hardcore. They only made like one 6-song EP.
Wow.
Yeah, that was
Inside Out.
that sounds like a real song.
I was trying to sing. I think there's maybe a Donna Summer song or something. Upside down.
Oh, okay.
Inside down. Something like that.
I thought maybe you were going to say a Donna's song.
Oh, no. An Adonis song.
Adonis.
I only listen to musicians that are real Adonises. Like
Adonises.
Like Peter Steele and Danzig and Henry Rollins. You know? I need some bulk.
Yeah, and there's nobody.
I need some muscle behind my music.
There's nobody as bulky as Glenn Danzig.
Oh, man, he's the best.
Accelerativ Thrust. I'm Dan.
And I'm Erik.
And this is where we interview all kinds of underground bands and music and all kinds of cool stuff. And I am sorry, I have that written down somewhere, but I forgot to bring it. We'll go with that for now.
We interview all kinds of bands and stuff. I like it. It's solid.
Interview all kinds of bands and stuff.
We interview records and review people. And
we talked about doing that. Actually, we talked about maybe reviewing our friends.
Yeah,
and maybe we should actually interview a couple records too. Just
wow.
See how they're doing in life. We could interview Danzig's first record.
Okay.
So what did it feel like being what did it feel like being mastered?
Being mastered by Danzig is actually my fantasy.
Yes. Mastered by Danzig. Erik.
Wow. Yes.
I need you, and I mentioned this to you. Mm-hmm. I need you to be my dream interpreter again today.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
I got my pad and paper like a real psychotherapist.
Are they called psychotherapists? The ones
I don't think they are anymore.
maybe they're called the dream doctors.
I think that is what it is. Dream doctors.
So this dream that I had, this was a couple nights ago, and I already sent it to 4 of our friends who are in the band Closet Witch.
Oh.
And there's a reason why I sent it to the 4 members of Closet Witch.
Okay.
That being, of course, Alex, Corey, Molly, and Royce. And it's because I had a dream that my band, my current band, Abnormal Man, played with Closet Witch at a comic book store in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
We were all set up in different parts of the comic book store. So it was like it was really weird. It was like, so I was in this part, and then I don't know, I was looking at Corey or somebody or one of the members of Closet Witch across from me. But then Jeff, the drummer of my band, was in another room playing drums, and somehow we were all in sync. It was really strange. But at the same time, while we were doing this, we were also looking through comic books. And none of this made any sense, at all. But anyway, then all of a sudden, there was a point in time where it was time for us to leave because my dad came in and said, "Okay, guys, time to go."
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so we all left with our heads down and all and just being really mad. There was just this huge feeling of like sadness and anger, like, and then I woke up. And that was
sadness and anger.
Sadness, anger.
Huge feeling of sadness and anger. Okay.
Huge feeling of sadness and anger. So that's the parts that I remember of the.
And it was in Las Vegas. How do you know?
And it was in Las Vegas.
How do you know it was in Las Vegas?
Because for some reason, it just was like, I don't know. Like at least in my mind, for whatever reason, I was in Las Vegas. Like it didn't. I don't think it really looked like Las Vegas. I didn't see any casinos, but for some reason, Las Vegas was in my mind as to where we are. It was very strange. Now, I have my theory on what maybe this dream is kind of meaning, but I want to hear your take on it, Eric.
All right, my take is,
after all, you're the dream doctor.
Yeah, that's my official title. Okay, I think. Let me look at all these parts. Okay,
Eric's
so this has something to do
with Danzig.
Yeah, I am. Ooh, the mesh shirt. Oh, the big metal cross necklace.
Let me pretend that I'm paying attention to you.
The Danzig skull belt buckle. I love this picture. Oh, covered in blood. Oh, that's Sam Hain era. Google image Danzig shirt. No shirt. Okay, so this
you sound like you're commanding somebody to do something.
Yeah, I'm making AI art. Peter Steele wrestling Danzig. This has to do with adolescence.
Okay.
It has to do with opportunities taken away by society and the world, defying that and taking a risk. That's why it's in Las Vegas. It's a gamble. But you're playing in sync and you're in different rooms. So I think that means even though you are playing in different bands, you feel still connected to Closet Witch and still a part of what they're doing. The comics, I think that just kind of represents that adolescence element.
Yeah.
Huge feeling of sadness and anger. Probably has to do with getting older and maybe seeing opportunities lost. But, I also think that the fact that it's in Las Vegas means that, these successes could still be found. I don't know. Something to do with that. Something to do with your band being connected with Closet Witch and you personally being connected with them.
Yeah.
But also feeling like, maybe directed in a way you didn't necessarily want to go by authority or society. I don't know. That's what I'm coming up with.
Okay. And so my interpretation is not too far off from yours. There are some slight differences in how I kind of thought about it. So as far as the anger and sadness goes, yes, an element for sure of sadness and turmoil created by the way society is. What I think that is that Closet Witch, 100%, I am connected to Closet Witch in a lot of ways. But one of the things that I messaged them about, and this is the first thing that I thought of, was it's time for me to go and see Closet Witch live or just go see some live music, period. And it's interesting because there's that Closet Witch show coming up that I talked to you about. Right. And I'm planning on doing that. So I think that me reconnecting with Closet Witch, because I haven't really seen them since the pandemic, which I think the pandemic is what represents the society changing element of it. As far as the adolescence thing goes, now the only thing that I would say coincides with that definitely is the fact that my dad came in and said it's time to go. So then there's that. But the comic book element, here's what I think the comic book element is. I've been, as you know, really into zine and comic book culture. And lately, the pandemic is what really drove me. So I have a bunch of indie comics, and I've actually been eager to share what I've discovered with a lot of my friends who I haven't, really been able to hang out with. And those friends include, Corey and Molly specifically, because I know they're always into that kind of stuff,
Yeah, sure.
And so I think that that's an element there. As far as like the missed opportunities thing goes, I think just maybe the way that the pandemic has affected everyone, I've been kind of thinking about that a lot lately. So like, I think there is an element of like, I miss my friends. And that's why like, I'm just sort of like, okay, now I am going to go to the show, because why wouldn't I? I haven't seen a show. I haven't seen Closet Witch in years, let alone a show, period, in years. You know what I mean? So I think there's also an element of like, when you're talking about taking risks, like, I think that's sort of like, okay, now it's time for me to come out of my shell that I've kind of been in. And that is kind of taking a risk, because it's like, okay, well, what's it going to be like going to a show now?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I think the crux of the dream, the main point is probably it's time to go.
Yeah, the interesting interpretations. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you, Eric, because I thought that was a very, very interesting dream that I had.
Nice.
Good job, Danny.
Greetings, citizens of Earth.
Greetings.
Welcome to Accelerativ Thrust, where we analyze your dreams.
Yes.
Please send us your dreams, and we will interpret them and also give you advice on how to proceed with your life based on those dreams.
And precaution. You should listen to nobody else on the internet except us.
I mean, you can, but it's only going to confuse things. So you might as well
do it.
Yeah.
Because how can it get any more confusing?
Yeah. You want to keep the confusion we provide. You don't
that that could be a slogan. Accelerativ Thrust. You might as well do it.
Yeah. It's like the Nike slogan, but shitty.
Yes.
Yeah. Might as well do it. Swoosh.
I think I just got a virus in my lungs from laughing so hard. The Nike slogan, but shitty. That was good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, you know what's not shitty though? Listening to records. That's pretty cool. Don't you think?
I like it. It's all right. I mean,
listening to music.
Music and cool.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all. I was just going to say music's cool.
Today's episode is going to be kind of there's going to be a little curveball thrown in here, as we are going to kind of start doing single reviews in addition to our album reviews as well. So
yeah, just a little single.
Just a little single, or in this case, it's really just one song. I don't know if they consider it a single, but there's this band that reached out to us, and we decided to listen to their track, and we're just going to talk about it a little bit after our album reviews here. And okay.
Wow. Okay, let's get to these goddamn records.
All right.
Come on, everybody. It's record time.
Okay, so my pick for this episode is the new Brainiac. Yeah, you heard me. The new Brainiac. So it's an EP. It's called The Predator Nominate. It came out just now, like just a few days ago. And it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. I don't know. It's interesting. So I love Brainiac. I mean, love Brainiac. Like, they're one of my favorite things. They're one of those groups that it feels like came out of nowhere with just a really kind of fully developed idea of what they wanted to be. it had elements of other things that existed for sure, but not in the way they did it, not with the same energy and weirdness. And at the time, I had a band that was heavily reliant on synthesizers, and it was not a popular thing. Like, I can think of maybe 6 bands in 1996, 97 that relied heavily on synthesizers and were doing interesting and cool things, you know? So they definitely fit in with those things and were a huge influence on me, had a big impact. So yeah, anyway, Brainiac, I love them. So what this is, these are the demos that were made for their major label debut, which would have happened in probably about 1997. But Tim Taylor, the singer, and I think, main songwriter, died in a car crash. And if you want to know more of the story of Brainiac, there's a really good documentary out there. I can't remember what it's called, but so yeah, let's get to the EP that they released. So I don't know. I want to say, wow, it blew me away, and this is amazing, and I'm so glad they put it out, and this really showed me what they were going to be like, but that wasn't really the feeling I walked away from it with. It felt more like if you were sort of a completist, right? And you wanted to know what Tim Taylor was working on before he died, and you just wanted to know that for your own knowledge, then this is an invaluable release. It's a big deal, and it's cool. But to me, the songs feel really unrealized, which I know that these are demos, right? And that's how demos work. That's why you make demos. But for the most part, it really seems like the earliest stages of these songs, like just, like a fake drum beat or whatever. And then maybe some guitar, maybe a synth over it a little bit, and maybe the outline for the words and melodies and stuff like that. And so it leaves me feeling like I don't know if these are how Brainiac demos always worked, and this is what they brought into the studio to work with, or if, in the past they had worked out more elements of these songs before going into the studio. I don't really know. But for me, what makes the Brainiac releases that we do have, what I liked about it was just they were so wild. And the instrumentation was crazy. The arrangements were surprising. Like the first time I heard Brainiac, I was like literally shocked by it. It was just like, well, not literally shocked, you know what I mean? But I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And most of that was due to the arrangements, the instrumentation, just the wildness of the whole thing. It was like, it sounded like they captured a wild animal somehow. That's how it felt to me when I first heard them. This, on the other hand, doesn't have a lot of that. It has a lot of playing the song through. That's what it sounds like. And the songs themselves, they're sort of missing that wild element too. They seem more like some of those kind of slow-moving, thick, atmospheric, heavy Brainiac songs, if that makes any sense. Not the wild, fleeting, crazy, dissonant energy songs, And so it leaves me feeling a bit like, I'm glad I heard it, but am I going to listen to it a lot? Probably not. I feel like maybe the producer of the first couple releases, Eli Janney, I think their name is, maybe they played a big part in it, or the guitarist that joined after the first release, John Schmerzel, I believe is how you say it, who went on to form Enon. I think maybe added a lot of those arrangement and instrumentation ideas too, because you hear a lot of that in Enon. So yeah, I guess I kind of came away from it, like I said, feeling like I'm glad I heard it. It feels more like a release for those sort of fans that want to be completists, that want to have everything that they recorded. But if you're a fan of Brainiac, there's absolutely no reason not to listen to this and imagine what these songs would have been and could have been. And also, if you're a fan of Brainiac, don't listen to me anyway. Like, just listen to the EP, you know? I don't know. I wish I could say it was amazing and it blew my mind, but it was more so like, wow, I wish I could have heard these songs completed. So what'd you think, Dan?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with you, Eric. So I also am a huge Brainiac fan. I don't remember when I first heard them, but it was long after Tim's death, probably in the early 2000s. And it was on a compilation cassette that a friend of both of ours, Noah Kester, made for me. And what Brainiac represents to me is sort of this new thing that I was discovering long after it happened, which, as you mentioned, Eric, was sort of these 90s bands that were incorporating synthesizers into their music, or just playing really abrasive music that didn't have any connection to like metal, or, you know, the guitars were oftentimes very staccato and repetitive, maybe repeating like one note. And, you know, the bands that I can think of that sort of reminded me of this were like Six Finger Satellite was a huge one, Men's Recovery Project to a certain extent. I would also say even I would throw in Shellac into that sort of thing. And then later on, maybe bands like the Liars and even stuff like to a certain extent Lightning Bolt. But Brainiac was always stood out to me because they didn't seem like, while they kind of fit into that sort of crop, that sort of scene of bands, they totally had their own thing going on. As you mentioned, Eric, their music was almost like, I don't know, it was almost like deconstructed noise pop or something. It was just really crazy. And like, you know, Electroshock for President was the last EP that they put out. You know, just all the Bonsai Superstar, which is an album that I love, and I can't remember the album that was between those two. Hissing Prigs and Static Culture, or something
Hissing
like that.
Prigs and Static Culture.
I don't know how to pronounce
that's my
but
favorite
anyway,
one. Yeah.
That's my
Amazing.
favorite one too.
Yeah.
I think that one is like exactly, if you're going to introduce somebody to Brainiac, just give them the record to listen to and don't say anything else, because you're not going to be, I wouldn't be able to do justice with words.
Right.
So yeah, that's what Brainiac was. And the name of that documentary, and I actually just, it's funny because before you even picked this as your pick, Eric, I think like literally like 5 days before you said that the new Brainiac EP was your pick, I actually watched this on Tubi TV.
Oh, nice.
And so the name of the documentary is Transmissions After Zero.
Oh, yeah.
Watching the documentary, that might even be the place to start, honestly. Yeah. Because if I had never heard Brainiac, I know that I would have been like, okay, I need to go and, you know, check this band out. You know, it made me gain even a higher level of respect for like Tim's vision. But anyway, so yeah, this EP is, it's a very interesting document of, to me, it just sounds like skeletal ideas of songs. You can definitely tell they're demos, no doubt about it. But like you said, Eric, I think that you can kind of get a glimpse of where they were heading. And it one of the things that I liked about this EP was that it really made me think about where Brainiac would have ended up with a major label, with their major label debut. Because like you said, these songs kind of sounded a little slower and less maniacal than some of their earlier songs. So it did kind of make me wonder, were they kind of, because they were on a major label, were they kind of looking to write singles? Because these songs were definitely, like, I think mostly incomplete. Like, you know, it definitely had that element to it. But I could hear like something developing, and I think we would have been surprised of where Brainiac was heading. And so that's the thing I liked about it, was just sort of how this left the imagination open a little bit, you know? I think they would have continued way more on the electronic path of Electroshock for President. I think listening to this, that's more than obvious. But yeah, it was fun to kind of just think about where this band would have ended up and how they would fit in to culture now. And I think watching the documentary, it's pretty amazing how much they did influence, I think. I think Brainiac were ahead of their time. And I think that, I don't know, it's maybe possible that we wouldn't have like an At the Drive-In or a Blood Brothers, had they not heard Brainiac, and it's another case of a band that accomplished, I think, a lot in a very short amount of time. So, but yes, the amazing discography they left behind, I would recommend checking out all of it. So that all being said, I think this is, it's a release for hardcore fans, people who just kind of want to hear or have just been thinking about, well, what would have happened, if Brainiac would have been able to stay together? That's definitely what this is. So that's neither here or there. It's very interesting sounds, but it's interesting to hear the skeletal development of, or at least what I think are, the skeletal development of some songs that they were working on. But hardcore fans only, I would say. Yeah. So that being said, I really enjoyed it, but I'm also a huge Brainiac fan. So it was really cool. It was cool, and I'm probably not going to listen to it. It's not going to be on repeat like all the other Brainiac records are.
For sure.
So moving on to my pick, I picked this record from a solo artist called Vex Ruffin. And the name of the record is Light Ace Frequency. And I know Vex Ruffin because he is a Stone's Throw artist, which, if you've listened to this podcast, many of my favorite hip hop records have been on Stone's Throw, including Mad Villain, and also it wasn't a pick of yours, but one of your favorite albums, Automatic, from 2022, Erik, was on Stone's Throw as well.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of really cool stuff on that label. Baron Zen, we talked about Baron Zen. That was on Stone's Throw, and a bunch of really great hip hop. I mean, Jay Dilla put out a lot of his stuff on Stone's Throw. And anyway, so Vex Ruffin is a Filipino artist, and he has been making music for quite a while. He has a few records out, and his early stuff was kind of bordered on gloomy, dark, post-punk sort of. And that is not this record. That is not what this record sounds like. There are some elements of that here, particularly in his voice, because his voice hasn't changed too much from what he was doing on those earlier records. But the music is, I think, a lot different. So it's kind of a hybrid record that really is, it is hard for me to completely define what it is, but I do think that it's very much a record that has a vision. Like, you can tell that he was going for something. And so Vex Ruffin does a lot of production and beat making. And this album, I would say that it's fairly experimental, but I also think it's also pretty accessible at the same time. So I wouldn't call it avant-garde or anything, but I do think there's a lot of, and there are elements of avant-garde music here, I think, to a certain extent, but I just think it's kind of just a combination of a lot of things. It has some stuff that resembles everything from dub to reggae to, I would say, even EDM. Definitely a huge disco element on this. And I would also say punk and just rock and roll is pretty present on this record as well. I would definitely say that disco, going back to the disco element, that's pretty heavy, especially on the second half of the record. And also there's a lot of what I would call, for lack of a better way to describe it, world music on here as well. World music influences, a lot of sounds from that, which I think is probably pulled from his Filipino upbringing. A lot of synths and drum machines and bass, and also real drums. And there's also a really heavy percussive element all over this record too that I really dig. And I also think that at the heart of Vex Ruffin, he does definitely have a b-boy hip hop inspired element to it, which totally makes sense, you know, being on Stone's Throw. You can definitely tell that he does a lot of production and beat making and stuff like that. Funk elements. There's one song in particular, and I can't remember which one it is, that really reminds me of go-go music, which I don't know if you're familiar with go-go music at all, Erik.
I'm not sure.
So it's a type of music that it started in DC. And the only reason why I know about it, to be honest, is because I watched the documentary on the DC hardcore scene called Salad Days. And it's a specific type of beat music, funk music from DC, and Trouble Funk, I guess, kind of is the pioneers of it. And it's just got a specific beat, like the way the drum beat flows. And you can hear a lot of influence in different hip hop and stuff like that. So I don't know much about it. I just know that the specific Trouble Funk go-go beat, there was a song on here that really reminded me of that specific beat. So I would actually recommend, if you're into that kind of stuff, listening to it, because it's some interesting things. Another interesting thing real quick that I'll throw in here is that Trouble Funk actually, probably one of the most famous and weirdest things about them is they actually played Minor Threat's last show.
Wow.
Yeah, Minor Threat played with this group called the Big Boys, and then Trouble Funk.
Oh yeah, Big Boys from Texas?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're from Texas. Cool. And Trouble Funk played. And from what I understand, Minor Threat just were not getting along, and they just decided to call it quits after that. It's interesting. I would also recommend that Salad Days documentary. But anyway, I really enjoyed this record. I think one of the things that I really liked about it was just fun. To me, it was just fun to listen to. I think it was pretty upbeat, pretty positive, which is quite a bit different than the moods of his previous records, which I would strongly recommend everyone listens to. If you check this record out and you really like it, his earlier stuff, I think you would really dig his earlier stuff as well, Erik. But it definitely has a different feeling than that. And so that's what I really liked about it. It just really honestly kind of put a smile on my face listening to it. And there are definitely some dark themes on here a little bit, but it definitely didn't hit like his earlier stuff in that department for me. Just a really fun record to listen to. And yeah, I think he was kind of going for a more positive thing. As far as things that this reminded me of, I don't know. There's elements of like The Bug a little bit, although The Bug definitely has a darker sort of industrial thing to it that this doesn't have. A little bit, I would say, even a little bit of Ween on here. Bumblebee's 81 reminded me a little bit of that. Also, The Feeling reminded me a lot of that Len record. Yeah. What's it called? You Can't Stop the Bum Rush.
Yeah.
And then also Baron Zinn, honestly, like, because there's definitely sort of an outsider element to this. Yeah. Not as much as Baron Zinn, but the production is really good. And Baron Zinn's production is kind of purposely bedroom lo-fi. But I do think their voices are kind of similar, actually. And that's not just because they're on the same label. That's just, I do think that there are similarities. But yeah, overall, this was just a fun record, I thought, and I really enjoyed it. What'd you think, Erik?
Yeah, it's funny. It's always funny to go into things blind, like not knowing a single thing about the artist or their previous work or their label or anything like that. It always makes it kind of crazy in its own weird way. But yeah, so I agree, obviously, with everything you said, but I do think I came from sort of a different angle. And to hear you say that their previous stuff was kind of gloomy is outrageous to me, because this, I would say, I didn't pick up that element hardly at all. There's some long form sort of noise, I don't know, atmospheric pieces that sounds like ambient music, but no, I mean, it's really funky. But those parts of it can sometimes get to a level of strangeness that could be heard as dark, but I didn't even really pick that up. It was more just like, I just heard this whole thing as like super fun, goofy, really light feeling, but like I said, strange enough to get sort of dark. I don't know how to explain that any further than that, I guess. But yeah, lots of synthesizers, cool synthesizers, like really out there and really retro feeling. Really funky drum machines with some real drums too, but everything has this weird element to it. Really strange samples that are rooted in, it almost seemed like 70s, like 70s funk sort of, but not like the good stuff, like the stuff on television. I don't know. Like I remember when I was a kid, like the variety shows would always, like Solid Gold, or I don't even know what crap was on, but it was always just this like funky music. And that's what this reminds me. The vocals are pretty straightforward, but get kind of weird too, or take different sort of angles or personas or whatever. I found parts of it to be like strangely pretty at times, some of the things that happened, but also very dissonant sometimes, like very dissonant, to the point of like almost, I don't know. There's one song in particular, it's called I'm Going Hard, which is a great, hilarious, fun song, but the drums, the tempo slows and speeds up, like not even consistently, but throughout the whole song. And seriously, it kind of makes you sick, but it's really cool. And it does add to that kind of outsider feeling of the whole thing. It's just like really strange. And the things that it reminded me of, obviously, will reinforce how I heard the record. Beck, for sure, but like all the eras of Beck, like Midnight Vultures era, and even into some like Mellow Gold Nodelay or whatever. Like there's elements of all those things, and even like Sea Change, to be honest, like the slower songs. So I picked up on that a lot too, but also with the synths and the way things are presented and how things move really reminded me of Bruce Hack, which is weird.
That makes a lot of sense.
And also how the songs really don't vary a lot. And again, with just the sounds that are used, to remind me of William Onyeabor. Do you know that guy? Okay. Well, the last name is Onyeabor. So however you want to say that. But then Jack Stauber, I don't know if you watch his videos or listen to his music at all. It's really dark, strange, goofy stuff, and that sort of reminded me of that. But then the sort of funky retro commitment part of it sort of reminded me of, like, I don't even know, some stuff that was out in the 90s, like more Chiba or whatever.
Oh, sure.
And just that commitment to retroism, But yeah, so I came away from it feeling like this is really fun, funky, goofy outsider music. And so I am excited to go back and listen to the other stuff, because I can't really imagine it being not this. So that's kind of exciting. But anyway, if you want to have fun, this is one of the most fun things. I use the descriptor of fun on nearly every review I give. It's annoying, but I mean it this time. This is super fun.
Sure.
So
yeah, absolutely. So our local pick for this episode is from a band called Phantom Threat. This is a 6-song EP, and Phantom Threat are a hardcore metal band based out of I think Muscatine for the most part, but I don't know. There might be some other members not in Muscatine. Nonetheless, it is made up of a couple of members that I know, which is Zach Tomfeld on vocals and Chris Winkle on bass. This Phantom Threat stuff, I think, is honestly, and I will say this is some of the best metalcore I've heard in a while. And I think part of it is because it sort of speaks to the type of metalcore that I like, which is to say that it really reminds me of a time and an era in sort of metalcore or hardcore metal, or some people just like to call it hardcore. Some people just like to call it metal. I don't know at this point. I sort of think genre labels are sort of almost pointless at this point anyway. But some of the heavier music that came out of the underground metal hardcore scene in the late 90s and early 2000s. That being said, I also don't think this is a throwback in any way whatsoever. I think that this is just really, really good structure and really good songwriting in this genre for sure. And I think it's really, really well done. It's heavy and intense, never lets up from the get-go. It pretty much just pulls you in and just sort of beats you over the head for 5 or 6 songs. And it's just it's pretty dynamic. I would say that some of the guitars resemble thrash, and even at times slightly black metal, but I think mostly it's rooted in sort of metalcore. I don't want to say it's not really the chugga chugga style metalcore either. It kind of reminds me of like early Himza and stuff like that a little bit. I think the bass and drumming and the vocals are completely on point. One thing about it is the performance is stellar. You can really tell that these guys have been practicing their stuff and their craft. And it doesn't surprise me because I know that Chris Winkle is a really good player. I just think everything's great. This was recorded by Luke Tweedy, Flat Black Studios, who I think really brought out the sound of what a band like this would be looking for. Just absolutely fantastic. And honestly, I can't really say much more than, some of the stuff that this reminds me of. If I had to think of some reference points, I would point to like early Cave In for sure. Now I know that the album that we reviewed a while back, Until Your Heart Stops, was maybe more thrash inspired, but it's not their official first album, but it's a compilation of early singles called Beyond Hypothermia. I think would be the record that I would more reference to this than like Until Your Heart Stops. But Cave In's a band that has changed their sound so many times that when you say Cave In, I almost feel like you have to specify what era of Cave In you're talking about. But also, I would say a little bit of like Black Dial of Murder. I would say a little bit of Converge. Some of it reminds me a little bit of Darkest Hour at times. Poison the Well. Maybe even some elements of something like Mastodon. And like I said, the first Himza record called Groundbreaking Ceremony from a long time ago definitely reminded me of some of that. Definitely a little bit of a hardcore vibe, a lot of metal stuff going on for sure. Yeah, and these guys are really getting out there. I see they're getting on some shows. From the beginning, these guys have been promoting the hell out of themselves. And so that's been really, really cool to see. And it's kind of been a minute since there's really been like, a band from Muscatine. There's definitely been a few, but within the last like year or so, it's kind of becoming more rare. We do have Eugene Levy, who's definitely doing some stuff. 2 members of Closet Witch live here. But other than that, there really hasn't been much of a scene in Muscatine. So it is kind of exciting to see that sort of happen. And like I said, I'm not even 100% sure if they all live in Muscatine now, but I'm pretty sure that at least one of their members probably do. In any situation, if you're into that style of metalcore, I see no reason why you wouldn't love this. What'd you think, Erik?
Yeah, I was pretty blown away by this, actually. It's really good, like legit good. Like, I don't know how else to say that, but I think this is undeniably good on every level, you know? Like, I think if you're into this kind of music, this is just amazing, to be honest. It's heavy as hell. And, you know, I don't really have a background in like metalcore stuff. Like, all the bands that you named, I know one or two of them, maybe, you know? But what I enjoyed about this was the sort of like old school thrash element, because it is there, and it's there perfectly. And like, it's done just so well. There's other elements too that I hear in there, like black metal, and some metalcore, like what I'm familiar with. The performances are stellar. Every instrument is doing exactly what it should be doing at all times and just nailing it. You know, in metal, a lot of times the bass gets lost. Not at all here. The shit is like thundering. And the drums, I feel like, do some really inventive things that you wouldn't expect. The guitars are just crushing. And the vocals are just so cool. They're like insane. They're just really high and really wild. And when you think there's no way it could get more intense, it's like there's the next gear and they go into it. But yeah, it's just brutal and energetic, through and through energetic. I don't feel like it's gloomy. I don't feel like it's depressing. I just feel like it's aggressive, really in your face. The intensity of it, you know, I haven't heard a lot of stuff that can match this intensity. Like, it's just brutal. But yeah, I can't say much more about it either. The production is really great. You know, I think that every element of it, it might be, this is going to sound weird, but it might be, in my opinion, the best thing I've heard come out of Flat Black. Like, it's just really nails exactly what it's trying to do. It's really great. But yeah, like I said, most of the things I'm going to compare it to aren't really going to be probably even applicable. You know, they're not, obviously not going to be accurate, but it's just how I heard it. So the thing I liked the most about it is it had this really cool old school thrash element to it, which is the mid-tempo thrash, which usually happens in old school thrash sort of in intros and things like that, because then they go into the just standard, you know, speed metal elements, and then they'll have like a screaming ass guitar solo and stuff. This foregoes all that, but keeps that mid-tempo brutality. So especially reminded me of South of Heaven. To me, that is sort of the pinnacle of sort of that mid-tempo thrash, where it's just like, if you slow it down just enough, you actually get a little more brutality and aggression out of it. And that's how this feels. A lot like Creator, actually, musically for me. And Creator is one of my favorite thrash groups. Sort of the breakdowns of Possessed. I really have always enjoyed Possessed's way of taking a song to another level or a different place. And a lot of early black metal and thrash and stuff sort of didn't do that. They were just like, well, put another guitar solo in, you know? And then as far as vocally, I didn't have a lot to compare it to. I know that like Converge, I would say, is similar. But yeah, I was blown away by the vocals. I don't know. I mean, it's really glossy. It's really, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's very real. It's fully realized and presented in a way where there's zero doubt that this is perfection for this group. And I don't know what else I can really say about it. It really blew me away. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I was completely blown away too. yeah, I'm really looking forward to the future of this group, and also just catching them live sometime. They've definitely been out and about, and so I'm gonna need to check this out. It's really cool stuff. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to kind of start doing some singles or just kind of song reviews, because we noticed that there's a lot of artists that we can cover on this show that don't really have full albums or full projects. I know we've done some EPs and stuff like that. And we're going to start with this group called Pardon Factory, and they're from Edinburgh, UK. And so they reached out to us to let us know about this song that they put out. The name of this track that they have, and as far as I can tell, it's the only track they have out on Bandcamp as of right now, is called One Without the Other. Erik and I both took a listen to this track that they sent us. And for me, I was super impressed with this. This is really good. I would say just really good acoustic. I don't want to say pop music, but it was pretty catchy to me. It had, some elements of, I guess you could say, UK. I guess UK pop. So, there's kind of an element of that sort of, but really good acoustic alternative rock stuff. And I really enjoyed it. The lyrics seem to be really, really cool. And I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more from this group. And, if they do end up putting out like a full release, or even if they put out more singles and stuff like that, we'll definitely be following them for sure. Good stuff. If you're really into like acoustic alternative type stuff, check them out for sure. What did you think, Erik?
Yeah, I liked it a lot too, and I would not shy away from calling it pop. I mean, it is very catchy. So I think that there's a big British invasion feel to this too.
British invasion, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, I think that you could find modern examples of it. Yeah, but that was the biggest thing for me, and it comes off as just jangly rock and roll pop, very 60s feel for me. It has kind of a discordant sort of feel to it though, because they use half-step chord changes in the verses, which usually are sort of like, for lack of a better word, kind of gross when someone moves a half step or whatever. But this works really well. It actually is super catchy, poppy. That sort of discordant element of it is reinforced by a really sort of out of key organ, which is cool. Like I said, this to me is very British invasion feeling. So there's basically the instrumentation feels like probably an electric guitar, an acoustic guitar, bass, drums, and some kind of combo organ, not a B3, but like a Farfisa or something like that. But yeah, it's cool and really, really catchy. There's a cool thing that happens at the end of the song. I won't ruin that. But a cool feel overall. So, I mean, as far as modern things, I don't know, broadcast maybe because of the organ. Maybe elements of some like Elephant Six or whatever, you know?
Yes.
But really it sounded more like Herman's Hermits or The Who, especially The Who, early Who, and maybe some Syd Barrett, stuff like that. But yeah, I would love to hear more from this group. One song really kind of isn't enough, which is exactly how you want people to feel. So I think it's great.
Absolutely. It's absolutely fantastic. And so that just brought up a whole other question in my mind. For some reason, in my mind, I associate the word pop with bad connotations, and there really is no reason to do that. So, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, sometimes I have no problem. And I don't know why that is. So I guess my question to you, Erik, is why do you think that would be?
Well, I think
what is wrong with pop music?
Well, I think it comes from our generation, the age that we are. like the way we grew up was like pop music is Spice Girls. Pop music is Michael Jackson. Nothing wrong with Michael Jackson. I mean, nothing wrong with Michael Jackson's music or whatever. But I just think that like the term pop sort of from pretty much the early 80s through now, I guess, means throwaway, disposable, crappy music. And maybe it's always meant that, but through the lens of nostalgia or retrospection or whatever, we see them differently. But for sure, in the 60s, pop music, to me, meant popular music. What's popular? What's on the radio? So the Stones were, I mean, they are rock and roll, but they were also pop music. But then, you know, Herman's Hermits is a great example of pop music. Like the Beatles were pop music. You know, and even into the 70s, I think there are a lot of, you know, we started to get into some genre classifications or whatever, like glam, but T-Rex, David Bowie, that stuff is pop music.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And so I think the reason that we probably have a negative connotation is because of the era that we grew up. And to be honest, those sort of genre classifications and the splintering of music sort of made pop music the shitty, easily accessible genre of music. You know what I mean? Like the more other genres we have, the more that pop, the idea of what is pop music gets synthesized into and condensed into something quite different. It's Britney Spears. You know what I'm saying? Because we have, you know, 1,000 other genres that are cooler or more underground or less accessible or whatever. And so I think, to me, that seems like the reason is, you know, honestly, I think about this a lot. Like in the 60s, you only had like 15 bands to choose from in the world. It was like, oh, well, I guess, you know, record stores, I can't even imagine. It was just singles, you know?
Right.
And so now that we have, I don't know, 10,000 new bands a day, it's like those things aren't going to be popular. They're not going to be the things on the radio. So that makes a huge difference as well. So,
you know, I just thought of an idea, Eric.
You sound excited about it.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know why. I was trying to get away with, I was trying to speak without yawning, but I have an idea.
Okay.
I just came up with an idea. Anytime that we want to shit on, okay, not shit on music, but if we want to say, well, I don't want to call it pop music. We should just replace whatever word has the connotation with Chuck. So I don't want to call it Chuck music.
Yeah, right. I don't want to call this Pop Chuck.
Pop Chuck.
All right. As always, thanks for listening. Tell your friends about the show. Subscribe on the things. Also, the YouTube channel is going to have the episodes on it now, and the old episodes, and also where you can find bonus content. The bonus from last episode is us talking to Brooks about They Might Be Giants. It's pretty good. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to get a hold of us and interact with us, and you should do it because we like it when we hear from you. Because we love you. I mean, there's really no other way to say it.
Absolutely not. And yes, we love you.
Oh gosh.
Come on, let's do a group hug. Group hug. Come on, over here, listeners. Group hug. All right, smile.
But if if you're not comfortable hugging, that's okay too. You don't have to. You
can just absolutely. All right, you guys have a good week.
Bye. Huge feeling of sadness and anger. Okay.
Huge feeling of sadness and anger.